Claire, thank you so much for being our guest speaker for our Rewilders community. I've had requests for us to interview you, so you've definitely got fans in our group. So thank you for being with us. And for those of you who don't know Claire, Claire and I and Angus, we all met in Connor many years ago, and it was a beautiful time up there. And then we've known each other through Super Coach Academy. And Claire is a friend, a colleague, a wonderful writer and teacher, and we just feel that you share so beautifully your wisdom and insight. So we're grateful to have you here today.
Yeah, so grateful. And I'm looking forward to actually spending some quality time with you, because in my my little understanding of you and the things that I've seen and things that I've heard, it's like I feel like you epitomize that lovely feeling that is so often pointed to in the community in this that surrounds this understanding. So I feel like, yeah, you know, you are someone that I've heard so much about, and I look forward to hanging out with you, as I say.
Thank you both, and same here. I mean, right back at you, all of it. That's, yeah, I'm so happy to have this time together. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you. So as we were sort of discussing briefly beforehand, we thought it would be really fun if you'd be willing to share your journey with the understanding and the evolution of that, and just what feels relevant at this point for you to share around that. And you said, can I ask you those questions too? And we said, sure. So it's going to be a back and forth conversation.
Brilliant. Yeah,
we're open books, I think.
Yeah, it can go anywhere.
I'm really interested to hear that back. Yeah, I guess for me, I guess sort of all of it started in childhood of feeling not quite right, obsessed, totally obsessed with what other people thought, and never really at ease, always feeling there was something missing, and so that total fear of other people's opinion became a sort of full-blown phobia of public speaking, and so alongside my job, I was sort of always looking, like doing different things just to see if anything could help. And one of the biggest mind-blowing events of my life was doing a yoga teacher training in 2005, and in California, actually. And it was literally the first time that it had ever been said to me in a way that I could hear, that what is going on in our minds' experience of ourselves and of other people, of reality, wasn't objective truth. And like, it really hit me like a ton of bricks. It's like, it really was the first time that it ever, even a glimmer of that had come about. And that really opened up a whole door, I would say, of so all my unease up to then, which had been always an attempt to sort of, you know, do the right thing, not upset anyone, don't ever do anything embarrassing. It started to sort of create a bit more freedom, that maybe that wasn't the way to go, that maybe there was something more in like what actually is true, what is true in our sense of self or in other people. And so that really was a huge milestone, I would say. And then the next milestone was reading Michael Neill's book, The Inside Out Understand Revolution.
Yeah.
Yes. And that I think put into very clear Western language what I'd learned on the yoga training. So it was another level of deeper grasp, I would say. And those, so those two things were pivotal. And then I did Super Coach Academy, which was amazing. And each weekend, you know, we'd be in New York or LA and London, and each weekend there would be a different guest speaker, and more revelation of the power of the mind, really. I would say the power of the mind to dictate how reality appears, and how that changes constantly. And so that was just more and more and cooler and cooler stuff, and everything. I remember when, like, on the first weekend of Super Coach Academy, we were all a bit jet lagged, you know, all the people who'd come over from the UK, and we were all like a bit tired. And then the next weekend we all got together. It just wasn't the issue that it had been before. There was something had shifted in that time, where the physical experience, what even that wasn't such a dictator of reality. And it was really fascinating, all the sort of ways that this started to change experience. And then after Super Coach, I worked with Michael for quite a while. He was my coach for a while, and that was great. And it was through him as Super Coach, really, that my business became a business. And then working with Garrett, or seeing some things from Garrett Kramer, and I went on a retreat with him and Jamie Smart. And after the retreat, we were in our little Facebook group. Everyone's sort of complaining a little bit about feeling a bit down of, you know, such a lovely weekend, and now it's like feels a bit of an anticlimax. And he just put in that group, you know, that this is nothing to do with you. Like, this is completely impersonal. And that was quite opening as well, to because I think up until that moment, probably, even though there'd been huge revelations and huge falling away, that was the moment at which the sort of spider in the center of the web, which was me, and what I thought, and how things were happening to me, that now came under question, really properly, like, to the extent like that isn't even the thing that it thinks it is.
Right.
And that opened up then, you know, we were talking a little bit about non-duality before we started recording, of that opened up that whole area of the idea that it's only a belief in the me as a doer, as the thing that is controlling, you know, speaking these words, controlling actions, managing thoughts. That belief of me as that doing, choosing, deciding, controlling entity, that's the issue, because that's not true. And that, oh God, that's like, because that, you know, our whole lives, that thing has been the absolute focus of everything, of protecting that thing, you know, securing it, making sure it has the right experience, it does the right thing. And the consideration that the whole idea of there being a entity that is actually separate from universal intelligence, separate from life, separate from consciousness, separate from wisdom, that it's that idea that is at the cause of all suffering. And it's that idea which is the accumulation of all the hurts that the mind body goes through, all the trauma that it experiences, the the insecurity, and it's sort of a collection of it, and it becomes the lens through which all of reality is perceived, and it's really a projection onto every moment. So the suffering in the moment is really an idea of me fighting its own reflection and trying to find peace and freedom within this projected reality that just isn't true. And so there's more and more, the more fighting there is, the more resistance there is, the more real it's looking. And it seems to me, I mean, that's exhausting. It's hopeless and exhausting, and it seems to me that is the core issue of mental health at the moment, is that attempt to find stability and freedom and peace in a way that is only exacerbating the suffering and the alienation and the impossibility of controlling anything. That's the issue, and so that's really become the sort of focus of everything that I'm doing in my courses and things, is to really see how the freedom, the peace, the home that we're looking for is already is the only thing already, and it has to be the only thing, otherwise there would be nothing. There would be no experience, there would be no thought, no idea of self, nothing. So the thing that doesn't go away, that we're looking for in a place it can never be found, and that is reality. Then that's a mind and a body settling back into what is actually true, responding and dealing with actual information, actual data, rather than a projected sort of nightmare vision. And it's just mind-blowing. It's truly mind-blowing. It's yeah, I think that there's nothing else for any human on earth to do other than to engage with that possibility, and through that engagement actually heal the wounds and the trauma that have led to the development of the idea of ourselves as separate. And through that coming into reality and simultaneously deeply, profoundly healing all these old sort of projections and creation, beliefs, we come into reality, and the search ends, the resistance ends, everything is aligned, mind, body, emotions, reactions, behavior, all aligned to what's true. And then from there, now what? That's, and anything then is possible, and anything then is sane. It's it's coming from the reality of really what we are. Yeah. So thank you for thank you for allowing me that trip down.
Yeah, that's profound. That's profound.
Yeah. I love in particular the spider metaphor too, because it kind of, for me, I guess because I'm so visual, the thought of a spider in the center of the web, that each one of those strands in that web could be my programming, my conditioning. And I've built this enormous web through the course of my life. It's like, I can't possibly let that go, because look how complicated it is, and look how intricate it is. And yet what you're pointing to is like, that's all an illusion. It can be let go. You can see it from a different vantage point. Even the spider is an illusion. And I guess for me, it's kind of sort of really, and this is my own search, is to sort of grasp what that means. Because that's how I've been conditioned to drive this human vehicle. So I'm still, I'm still struggling with that. I feel like I teach this, if we're going to call it an understanding, from that sort of vantage point, but there's still for me so much of an insight to get hold of around what I'm actually pointing to. But it seems like there is a truth there that makes sense, but I still grapple with it. I still feel like, you know what, I'm the spider. I need to see it through those however many eyes of spider.
And Angus, what's been your journey in that respect? What have been your milestones, would you say?
Well, actually, I think it comes back to and I guess to maybe address the sort of the non-duality question. I think that was something that I wasn't even made aware of when I first kind of came to this understanding. I did the apprenticeship with the Pranskys, and I kind of sort of got off and can't put a string of sentences together.
Take a breath. We're just so excited to see you, Clare.
Got up and running, I think, is what I was trying to say. As a coach in a small way. And I couldn't quite, what started to really alarm me, I think, was that when I got a hold of this understanding through doing my apprenticeship with the Pranskys, and then there was almost like, it started to become apparent to me that there are two camps. There's a sort of, this one camp which people are suggesting is non-dual, and there's another camp that is not. And I didn't even see it on those terms. I think the way that I saw it at that time is that this question of free will was cropping up. I don't know why I kind of got a hold of that, but that really disturbed me. One camp, it seemed, was saying there's no such thing as free will. Another camp's like, of course there's free will. And it seemed like that camp that was saying, of course there's free will, was in what I would say was more the older God, let's say. Maybe the purist as I interpreted it. And so that was really a struggle for me. Because on one level, I'm like, I don't know, of course there has to be free will, but I was so seeing it from the spider in the center of the web. And then this is kind of a long story, so I hope it's okay to share, because I'm sure a bunch of people have heard it before. But I went to Salt Spring, and I'd already been, I think, the previous year. But on this second year, when I went, I decided to myself, the first time I went, I found myself judging everything, and my mind was spinning, and there would be these long, protracted moments of silence, and I'm like, what is going on? What is everybody doing? And they're talking about the feeling, etc. But my mind is just racing. So this time, the second time I went, I decided I'm going to go and I'm not going to judge anything. Not going to have, any moments where I'm going to like judging what other people are doing. I'm just going to try to sort of really be open with this whole experience. And I hope this makes sense, because it kind of makes sense to me. Every time I try to articulate it, I don't feel do this situation justice. But there was a moment on the second day where Chip was sharing, and I just suddenly found myself, all this emotion came up. And in all of that emotion coming up, normally I'd be like, ooh, what's that? Why is there emotion coming up? And my intellectual mind started to do that. But in this moment, because I made this pact with myself, because I set this intention, right, you're not going to do that. You're not going to try to pull that apart or analyze it. You're just going to allow that to move through you. And what happened is I allowed that to move through me, and the tears came. But in this one moment, I felt like I had this insight. It's like, there is no such thing as free will. Free will is just a concept. It's part of my conceptual mind. And that was a total game changer for me. That was like, that was such a defining moment. And I think what was so kind of amazing about that is that it finally allowed me to feel like, you know what, I've kind of arrived. I can do this work. I understand it now. And my coaching practice kind of like took off at that point, which was kind of crazy. When I really look back, it's like, that was the moment where things started to fall into place for me. So I don't know if that, that makes sense, but it's like, I would say there have been many defining moments, but that, I think, in terms of having a sort of non-dualistic experience, understanding that was kind of like, that allowed me to sort of like, to go up a gear, if you like.
But wow, that's amazing. What, Rohini, what's your experience in that area?
There's one sort of insight that's coming to mind, but it's something that just keeps evolving for me. Like I don't even, how I think the more you see, the more you realize you don't see. So it's kind of like feeling like I've scratched a tiny bit of the surface of something infinite. But one of the big insights I had, which was really funny because you had a really negative reaction to it, was I was up doing one of the Prances trainings because the mentees would go up and assist at the small groups. And so I don't even know where it came from, but what really hit me on a deeper level was that there was really absolutely nowhere to get to, that I saw how I was still somehow striving, thinking that this understanding from that, Sydney Banks, whatever his teachings are, that was somehow going to get me somewhere. And it was such relief to let go of the seeking and to realize that my human experience wasn't me. And so it didn't really matter what my human experience was, that I didn't need to change it or fix it or make it any better, because that had been my sort of MO for such a long time. And I had sort of shifted that to an extent, but that went much deeper. And I know there's even deeper to see that. But I felt a really huge relief. And what was so funny about that is I was trying to explain this insight to Angus, and he thought I'd just become really nihilistic and that he couldn't work with me anymore. And like the feeling for me was the opposite of nihilism. It was freedom. It was liberation. It was pressure coming off of me. And I think as that continues to deepen inside of me, I just have a deeper experience of the witness, the part inside. Like there's all of this experience that comes and goes, and there's something else that I can't really explain, but I have an experience of. And for me, it's very much connected with the feeling of love. Like I feel like an open-hearted expansion when I'm in that deeper connection or deeper awareness of that space, deeper conscious awareness of that space. It's not like it's not there, but I'm just more aware of it at times than others. And so for me, that's a compass point, that felt experience of open-heartedness and love. And that feels like that's what doesn't change. My mind does, but there's something in that I can come back to, can come home to.
Yeah. Oh, but isn't that wonderful? Both of what you both said. That's like that space that Rohini's describing, and then so that like pure sort of emptiness, the fullness, isn't it really? And then within that there's this apparent body making choices, like to Angus's point around free will, that there are choices being made and tons of actions taking place and words happening, and to have that combination, I think is really incredible, isn't it? That there is a sort of sensory body moving around, and yes, actions largely, or entirely from the wiring, from the conditioning, and the more clearly that's seen, that although there's choices being made, there's no chooser really. There's just what's been learned, there's what's believed. And the more that aligns to what you've described, Rohini, in terms of that unchanging space, then all action, all choices are more and more just coming from there, aren't they? So it's no surprise really that Angus's business took off from the realization of, and it's such an irony, really, like when you think of how we sort of think we have to drive and be the thing, but the realization that there isn't a decider, already is such a shift into sanity. It seems to me that it's such an alignment already, just that there is no free will, there is no decider. Bam, in that instant there's an alignment with truth and reality that wasn't there before. And so all attention now is much more in reality, much more availability, more listening. So yeah, I mean, it's brilliant, isn't it? So logical. It's that way around.
Opening of that channel. I mean, it's so hard to speak to it, but I loved what you said earlier about how all of the healing happens from that place. Like, that's been my experience in such a profound way, that the experiences of my life that would have been very painful, that would have, I don't know, lingered in some way, the freedom from that has been so beautiful, to be able to just have a different relationship with thought and memory and experience that isn't painful. And to just have it be what it is, but to not have it hurt in the way that it had hurt. And when you were talking about the freedom that you felt, like you talked about how you were with the public speaking, and how all of that thinking was so painful. I mean, I really relate to that. And I had so much, and still have conditioning, but I have so much less identification with my conditioning that had me feel that I was less than and unworthy and not good enough, and needing to prove my worth, needing to earn love, needing, like, that was just so painful. And to have more freedom from that, I'm not saying I have complete freedom, but more freedom is such a game changer in life.
Yeah. Oh, Rohini, yeah. I think because I think the biggest risk of a conversation about no self or no free will is that almost it can become a get out clause for actually getting present with our layers of insecurity and shame and fear. And I think it's the biggest part of it, really, that the more clear it becomes that the actual only truth, the only objective truth is what you described, Rohini, is that space of love, presence. And then within that, there's this apparent world appearing, a relative world that has some substance to it, but actually doesn't have an objective truth, but because it's perceived, but it's, there's computers and there's Zoom calls and other people. And it seems to me the combination of those two things, that the understanding of those two things, allows for transparency of all the reactions that we have, all the crunch moments, all the stress, all the fears, everything sort of can be more made more transparent in the understanding of what's actually true. And then it seems each moment we experience in real time is actually, the whole past is in that moment. So in a moment when I'm online dating at the moment, if I sort of get turned down by a date or something, in that moment, that crunch of rejection or like similar to you not feeling worthy or good enough, all of the past is in that reaction, isn't it? It's all there. And to be still with whatever's arising and really feel it when through our whole lifetime we would have employed all sorts of distraction and numbing and coping, but to actually have whatever is there to be felt, and to see that the scenarios and the projections, that there is no actual truth to any of it. And that seems to me the way that freedom actually becomes embodied, really. Like it's not bypass.
Yeah.
It's not clever words to avoid actually interacting with people or facing needs that have never been met. It's right. The truth is allowing the body to be really deeply experienced. And I think for me that's the most powerful aspect of everything that we're talking about. And
and that simplicity of opening to experience, and the love does the healing. Our true self does the healing, like that in whatever the timing is, not within our control, but it naturally unfolds. It was interesting. Our daughter came home last night, and she'd had a very painful experience at work where she had asked her boss for a raise a few weeks ago. Her boss had agreed to it, but needed to work out the details and asked her to come up with a proposal. And I think the boss sort of came back with a lower number, and she didn't feel that was right. So the boss asked her to come back with a proposal. And she's 22. And so this is the first time she's doing it. And she asked me for some help. I gave her some support. A friend of ours gave her some support. And then she came home and she just burst into tears because her boss got angry with her, was outraged by the number. And I could feel sort of all this emotion arising within me, the outrage that, how could this woman get angry? And then also there was that space of witnessing it all inside of myself. And because that was there more rather than less, I felt like I was able to show up for her in a more loving way and hold space for her and be with her in her suffering in a much purer way, less contaminated by my own story and narrative and righteousness. And there was that, I was feeling all of those things, but just in the openness to that, it felt like such an intimate, beautiful moment where I could just hold her while she was crying and love her and just be in connection with that level of intimacy. And so I'm just saying that because there is such a practicality to this and such a real world benefit. It's like you're saying, it's not just this intellectual gaming going on. There was a capacity for me to be more open-hearted because of that knowing of the space that I wanted to identify with and hold, rather than getting pulled into the narrative that was coming forward, that was happening simultaneously. Did you notice anything around that? You were maybe busy.
I was kind of busy, yeah.
You're in English land.
I wasn't. Yes, I can't give you an informed opinion of that. He was showing up in that moment.
Because it's sort of the same, Angus, isn't it? With what you were describing when you were listening to Chip at Salt Spring, and because I think whether it's happening for ourselves, where there's that the desperation to not have these emotions goes, and then there's just this allowing and listening into what's there, or whether, as Rohini's describing with your daughter, the falling away of the need for her to be in any way different. So enormous, that, because so for your daughter, she's not any, doesn't, if for 1 second we wanted her to have a different experience in order really so that we don't suffer, isn't it? the attention is like sort of goes almost there, then straight back here, because it's all about me, and it's all about that attempt to control and numb and not feel.
Yeah.
And then when it's gone, she's fully there. Like there's not a single detail of her that can't be fully experienced in that moment. And so whether it's for the daughter or whether it's for our own self, the own body, own emotions, it's so powerful. And it's such a deep presence, isn't it? The absolute presence to reality. It seems to me is our sort of the animal design or plant design of the body is to be in reality. That's the function. That's how it works, is in reality. And I think what you're both described is like that shift from any form of resistance, any form of judgment, into full openness, and then the entire intelligence of the design is working with actual data, not with imagined, projected, our own issues, isn't it, coming up?
This is, it's kind of great because I don't think I've told that story for a long time, but it's allowing me to see it with, I think, more clarity. And one thing that I did neglect to say is that I thought was so astonishing about that experience is that even though I had struggled with this whole idea of free will for, I think, about a year, because I think Rahini had her insight by this point. So it was just exacerbating the whole issue. We can't work together on a completely different page. But what was so amazing about that moment, in that decision not to sort of judge, just sort of surrender to the feeling, is like that. And it felt kind of so abstract, because that was the last thing that was on my mind, was that question of free will. But that's what emerged in that experience of surrender. And I kind of love what you're talking about, and I guess this is the way that I'm hearing it, because I feel like this is something that for sure is I guess a fairly recent exploration for me, maybe because I'm forever the remedial student. I don't know. But there's so much wisdom in the feeling, and that's just, that's that universal field, whatever we're going to call it, is using my body to sort of give me prompts and input that I can, hopefully use for my edification. I don't know, but it's like being able to surrender to the feeling without having to, sort of like judge it from the optics of the spider that wants to control and manipulate and to resist. There's a strong need to resist sometimes those feelings that may be overwhelming, when really all the wisdom is in the exploration of that feeling or the surrender to that feeling. I think that's really fascinating. That certainly my conditioning is like, ooh, feelings, those are really kind of awkward and difficult. Even with our daughter last night, she was embarrassed that she'd cried, and had tremendous judgment towards herself for getting caught up in that feeling. It's interesting, that is the conditioning. But this conversation is great in the sense that it allows me to sort of look at it from, with a little bit more understanding, in terms of, my feelings are just really there to guide me. And I think for many years it's like, oh no, feelings are difficult and awkward and are going to get me into trouble.
Although I would maybe say that feelings are just there, that like there actually is no purpose to them, because we don't even know where they could have come from, the moon, from hormones, from eating a cheese sandwich, or the accumulation of years and years of something, and then something triggers it, and then floods of emotion coming in. And so I feel more and more that the feelings, and I know there's that lovely Sid quote about the feelings, but and I wonder if it sort of gets a little bit misinterpreted along the way, perhaps, and the love that Rohini was described, that sort of total settled absolute is almost like it's beyond feeling.
Mm.
And that's the navigation. So that's all the information is in there. And then the feelings that come in are absolutely there to be felt. And this ongoing attempt that we have, so coarse, so innocently, to not have them because it feels like there's something wrong with us, and there's, we shouldn't be thinking and feeling these things, but they're there to be had, but they don't. And the having of them is a healing space for us. I really feel like it was healing, when you were with Chip, Angus, wasn't it? Like that was a deep release. But there is an information there that they're not the guide. And when it looks like they're a guide, they're sort of, there's a level of protection, I think, and analysis that of something that actually isn't true. It's a step removed from the truth, which isn't affected in any way by whatever feeling is there. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a whole other layer of the onion.
I love that. I love that. And I know the quote that you're talking about. And I do think that for me, not being afraid of my experience has been life-changing. And to see that it really doesn't matter what my experience is.
Yeah.
That there is a wisdom. I do believe that there's a wisdom that I don't understand and I don't need to understand in whatever experience arises within me. And that really, the more I can be with it, the more open I stay, the more connected I feel. Oh, hello. we love furry friends.
Dinner time.
Oh, it's very cute. But that sort of, I think that the desire for the intellect to make up meaning is so compelling.
Yeah.
And to really just be with experience without it meaning anything is really liberating. And to see that meaning actually isn't what's needed, even though we are compelled to make it up over and over again. But it's like, if we see that as the game that the mind plays and don't buy into it and don't make meaning up about the meaning, then there doesn't have to be a lot of attachment to it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's lovely. There's a lot of people would come on my courses, say, to, and of course, why wouldn't they, to get rid of feelings, or control emotions, and to they're specifically there really to have the experiences that they think they have to have in order to be okay. And we, so pretty much every course we start off by saying, if whatever you're on here to get rid of, or to control, or to numb, that is going to ramp up through this, because that attempt to control something that is completely uncontrollable, and to resist something that actually is there to be felt, is a completely vicious circle that again, I think is the cause of sort of declining mental health, because the vigilance and the ongoing sort of rigidity of trying to not have any of the emotions that we don't think we should have, any of the thoughts we don't think we should have, it just sets up this ongoing sort of wired, constantly on alert for anything that is transgressing this image of how the mind should be. And it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse, because the thing that we're resisting is the thing that is getting more and more built of concrete, really. And when we, instead of trying to do any of that, instead just embark on this conversation with really, like, with the questions like, actually what is true, or what is real, or what am I really, or what is doing, those sorts of questions, I think, open up a space of inquiry that is really available to sort of actually then move into a virtuous circle in which, through inquiry, there's more and more space and capacity to feel and to engage with whatever's there. And the more engagement there is, the more is allowed in, and the less is resisted, and there's more connection with reality, with other people, with all the emotion, the whole spectrum of experience. And it seems to me that that's so, from the shift of really severely declining mental health in that attempt to control, to an ongoing increase of capacity and expansion and unveiling of presence, that sort of seems to me the bridge through that we go on. And the big difference is, am I here to fix and control, or am I really here to see what's true? And it's that seems to make all the difference.
I love that distinction.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, thank you, Clare. This has been a very heart-opening, thought-provoking, in a good way, conversation. Profound.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's going to keep resonating, I think, throughout our day and longer, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think my mind is a bit blown at the moment. I need to settle.
That's the highest honor.
No, absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Is there anything else that you'd like to say? I don't feel like there's any other questions that I have, but if there's anything else that you feel you'd like to share, please.
Oh, and just to say thank you so much, and thank you both for all you do. I read all your things and watch your videos, and it's so beautiful. I mean, you truly are shining lights, and I'm so grateful to be here with you both. Thank you.
Thank you, Clare. So much, Clare. And I'm grateful for all of the work that you do in the world too, and look forward to more collaborations, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. Oh, so much love to you both.
Lots of love.
Lots of love.
Turn the recording
Bye,
off.
darling. Bye.